And this meeting is being recorded. We're excited to have our extended Hope family, people from around the world, joining this session, and it's a pleasure seeing all of you and having you here. We're honored to have Vinit Taneja join us today on a topic that excites a lot of people. Discover your innate calling to impact humanity. I think that especially in a time of war and values slipping and sliding all over the world, human principles and human impact matter a lot, and really motivate audiences and people to get focused and learn how to get this work done. A lot of the issue is how to do it. It's one thing to talk about it. It's another to actually get the work done. And Vinit is going to talk about how to get started. How do you find your passion, your beginning, and what kind of frameworks do you use to decide how to do the work? I want to preface my comments or Vinit's comments with one notion that somebody shared with me 10 years ago. And Ed said, if you're a good person, you're a success. So there's a simple way to get started. And then there are broader ways to get started from that precept and that beginning. Vinit, again, has worked with many of the great companies around the world, from Gillette to Airtel, J&J, IQL. He works with leaders from startups all the way through very established companies. We're so honored to have him and excited to have all of you. It's good to see Renuka, Joe, Swatish, Charu, others who've joined us most recently. So let me turn the microphone over to Vinit, and glad to have you from New Delhi, and greetings from Greater Boston to Mother India. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Kevin. Kind of you. And welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining in. Quite obviously, this topic has a lot of interest amongst people. And I think before we begin, if I might just request all of us to just take a minute's silence and get centered with our breathing, so that whatever we have come from through the day, we are able to at least be here fully. So just take a minute, sit back, keep your hands wherever they are comfortable, uniformly. Keep your feet also uniform. You can keep your eyes closed or keep them open as deemed fit, but simply focus on your breathing. An in-breath and an out-breath. Be here in this present moment. Let the thoughts flow if they have to, but don't get caught up in them. As you breathe in, notice a little warmth at the top of your nostril, a cooling sensation. And as you breathe out, notice a little warmth right under your nostril on the upper lip. Just stay with it. Yes, that's good. So whenever you're ready, you can rub your hands together, warm them up, warm your face up, and just emerge with a smile. Thank you. Lovely. So before I begin talking about whatever it is that I have to talk about, it'll be a good idea to get some comments in the chat box as to what is your own understanding of the difference between a job, a career, and a calling. Since this is all about finding your calling, it's a good idea to at least deliberate a little bit on that. So just in the chat box, whatever is your feeling, difference between job, career, and calling.
You can find the chat box in the bottom center of your screen, and I realized calling.
Hi, so that you can see it.
I realized calling was the focus here when we started with a meditation, a breathing exercise. So our first answer is a job is to be paid, a career is to be paid for something I'm doing, and a calling is passion. And then Renu says a job is something you must do, a calling is what you enjoy. Chandra chimes in, calling will pull you, no matter what the monetary benefits are, and other returns. So calling is aside from money, is aside from business, kind of sits above all that. Danny says calling is purpose. Calling drives me regardless of circumstance. We have calling is purpose driven. If your job is aligned to your calling, says Swati, it no longer feels like a job. Those are some of the initial responses.
Beautiful. No, I think thank you so much. So one thing is very clear. There is a difference. At least there is a perceived difference in our minds. And I guess whilst we can have definitions, there is a Kalyan Mitra that I have by the name of Nitishanti that some of you might know. And he provided at one stage with a very interesting definition. He says a job is something that you do with your hands. And it is perhaps something that you do to pay your bills. A career is something where you perhaps use your head and your hands. And it is not just about earning a money, but it's also about growing yourself in the process. And a calling is something where you're using, apart from your head and your hands, you're also using your heart and your soul in a way, which means you're actually deeply connected with something which is way beyond ourselves as well. So I like that. I kind of like that definition, and in a sense, I also subscribe to it. And for me, the question that therefore started, and where my journey started, was quite early in 1992. Well, not early by my standards, because by then I had already worked for about 11, 12 years. But in 1992, I was laid up with a heart attack and I was only 35 years old. And when I was recuperating both in the hospital and at home, my mother handed over a book to me called Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramhans Yoganand. And somewhere I think that stirred a lot of things inside me. I started to think of, what is really the purpose of our life? What am I here for, etc. However, I don't think I really found those answers till much later. And somewhere in the late 90s, I also got exposed to a management philosophy or a approach of balanced scorecard, in which you have something called leading indicators and lagging indicators. So for example, profits are a lagging indicator and customer satisfaction is a leading indicator. And if customer satisfaction is the lagging indicator, then process excellence is a leading indicator. And if process excellence is a lagging indicator, then people's attitude, people's knowledge and skills is a leading indicator. So there is a cause and effect relationship somewhere. And in 2007, this is the time I was actually working in Airtel and I was conducting a training program for them. And I just stepped out and I had a kind of an epiphany, and what really came to me was, don't go around looking for purpose. Instead, go around figuring out what is your passion, which means what is it that you do when you do it, time just stands still for you. To me, that's the definition of passion. So, what are you really passionate about? Because this is something that has been seeded in us. It's something that we have perhaps carried in our soul as we took birth. And it is only a matter of uncovering it and discovering it rather than developing it. You can still develop it, but there is an innate passion which is there. The other thing is to discover your core proficiency. What is core proficiency? Core proficiency is not what you're good at. You know, many of us who are intellectually good can possibly find that we can be good in many things. But the key thing is to figure out what is it that you're naturally, spontaneously, and effortlessly good at. So, just to make it easier, I started calling these thrill and skill. So, I said, our journey of finding our purpose, and I call purpose the divine will, otherwise, you can call it purpose if you like. Some people love Kotler's 4 P's, so you can use the P's as I'm saying, which is passion and proficiency. So, this is where I started thinking about my own passion and my own core proficiencies. I realized that even as I was growing up and I was in school, I was quite fond of teaching. Um, and more than fondness, I had a certain patience about it. My mother would sometimes tell me to teach my younger sister, and you can imagine how difficult it is to teach your own sibling. But of course, I would crib, but I found some level of joy in that. And so I started to feel that something about teaching is sitting well with me. It wasn't even about being good in it, but it was about being passionate about it. So when I went to college, my MBA, I actually became a teacher in statistics. I found myself teaching people till midnight before even starting work on my own preparation in subjects that I was good at. So there were many ways in which I figured out what am I passionate about. Um, then I started to think of what is really my proficiency, what is my core proficiency. And I went back to some of the periods in college, for example. I used to do declamation, I used to do theater, which means that I was good at communication. I had no stage fright. So I discovered that about myself. I also realized that about 6, 7 years into my profession, when I was asked to make a presentation in front of about 150 people, including the vice president of the company of my division, um, after the presentation, a lot of people came to me and said, how many weeks did you take to prepare for this presentation? And believe you me, it actually wasn't weeks, it was hours. What I found was that whenever I actually prepared for a presentation, it came in my way. So I was best in being spontaneous about it. Even right now, as I'm speaking to you, I'm not referring to any notes, to be honest. I'm not even prepared. I'm just saying what is coming to me at this moment in time, because I think that is what needs to emerge. So I discovered some of these things. I also discovered in one or two of my work assignments that I can build teams. And later on, this whole thought process went from building teams to building communities. I became very good at building communities. Now it is probably more social media, but prior to that, it was actually physical communities. So, armed with this kind of a knowledge of what is it that I was passionate about and what is it that I was good at, uh, I really started to think about what is it that will best suit my work in which I can combine both these things. One of the things I also realized was that it is possible for you to be good at something, but not necessarily be passionate about it. One of the examples in my life was the whole world of business processes. For about 9 years, I worked in a consulting company where I worked on business processes. And I was very good at it. And later on, some clients of mine would actually call me for doing that work. But I was not charged about it at all. So it's very important to understand that being good at something is not a license to be passionate about it. You have to discover both and you have to really align both. So over a period of time, I realized that I was very charged up about people, what drives people, what moves people, what inspires people. So in a very interesting way, I combined these two to start looking at people processes, not necessarily operational and business processes. And that is how the alignment found me, and I found the alignment. So I guess the core thing that I'm trying to say here is the term that I gave to this is called resonance. Resonance stands for transformational resonance. And this transformational resonance, if I may just, I just put a slide, so let me just use that. For me, this transformational resonance is an alignment of three things. It's an alignment of your thrill, which means what you're passionate about, your skill, which means what is it that you're really good at, not just good at, but spontaneously, effortlessly good at. And this is not about being uh, egoistic about it, but somewhere that you are good at this. And the last thing is, once you have figured these out, you then look for a drill, which means the choice of a profession or a vocation in which you can align both of these. And once you do that, I believe what then comes out and emerges for you is really the divine will or the purpose of your life. So this is perhaps my way of thinking. I have not just seen it for myself, but I also tested the waters for a few people. So when I turned 50, I left my very decently paying job in a multinational called Airtel, and I joined a startup company called Prerna Center of Learning, essentially to live my resonance. And the vision of that organization was to develop consciousness centered leadership that will transform society. Because I became a lot more concerned about not just my own benefit, but about a benefit of the wider world. Now, those of you who may have heard about Ikigai would have heard about four things that it talks about balancing, which is what you're good at, what you're passionate about, what pays the bills, and what's good for the world. I think my learning was that what's good for the world is more coming out of the development, your own inner development, your own connectivity with your soul. This may or may not happen for everybody in the beginning. And therefore, it's quite okay for us to not over worry about it in the beginning. However, the kind of satisfaction and fulfillment that you get when you're actually engaging in something which is good for the wider world just cannot be substituted by your ability or the amount of money that you're earning. So this was certainly for me a big insight that as you evolve, you will start to automatically look at meaning and not necessarily money. Money may keep coming and you have to be thankful for it. So this is, as far as resonance is concerned, that is really the thinking that I have. And there is also a process. I started guiding people, for example, in the process. And I'll just share the process here with you. What was the process that I encouraged everyone to follow? This wasn't the process that I followed, but I realized over a period of time trying to help many people that this process will perhaps work well. So the first step in this process is to identify people who have been close to you in your life, both at a personal level as well as at a professional level. So just like a 360 degree, which many of us are used to in a leadership context, this is also like a 360 degree. So identify such people from different walks of life, both work and personal life. And I typically encourage, talk to your parents, talk to your very good friends, talk to your siblings, talk to your bosses, talk to your peers, talk to your team members, enough number of people with a certain amount of diversity who have seen you in action. Ask them two questions. the first question to ask them is, what is it that you have really seen me passionate about? Okay. When you have seen that when I'm indulging in it, time stands still for me. I probably may not even worry about eating, etc. That's the question. What am I passionate about? The second question to ask is, what is it that I am really good at? Naturally, spontaneously, and effortlessly good at. Seek examples from them, saying, give me an incident based on which you say this, so that it becomes clear to you that what they are sharing with you is not just something which is coming from top of the mind or something to please you, but it is backed up with evidence. And even when you're trying to deal with the whole subject of passion or proficiency, go deeper. You know, the Japanese have something called 5 why analysis, which means you keep asking why. So if somebody says that, oh, I love playing football, okay, very good. But then you ask the next question saying, what is it about football that you love playing? What aspect of it? Then somebody might come and say that, oh, it's a team game and I love playing team games. So then you begin to get a slightly different flavor of what that passion is. So keep digging till you are able to get to that set of answers. Once you've got these answers from people, and you obviously have your own reflection based on the way you have lived your life, consolidate and reflect this on this information. Consolidate this information and reflect on it. And my own understanding is that you get to a stage, maybe it is 70%, maybe it is 80%, but you begin to get a deeper understanding of your nature. In Hindi, we use a term swabhav, that what is my nature, and my nature as represented by what am I passionate about and what am I really good at. Now, once you have that in place somewhat, and you don't have to reach a sense of perfection there, but at least you got a sense of it, then you start thinking of drill options, saying, what kind of things will this actually work in? Which means, what are those options of work where these two can come together? So brainstorm those drill options. I mean, when I was going through my own journey, and I realized in hindsight that my drill options were very varied. I applied to be the CEO of a hospital, among other things. Just before I became the CEO of this company, Prerna Center of Learning, which I spoke about. So drill options can actually be many. And from these drill options, now this is the time you bring up your current context and if you have any limitations. Some people, for example, have mobility limitation. Some people don't have money as a limitation, but they have other limitations. They're looking after parents. Something or the other in their current context is important. So once you have a set of drill options, you now apply the current context and work out what I would say are the viable options of drill. And once you have figured out the viable options of drill, then I guess you have to find ways to connect with the options. I set up a not-for-profit body called Resonance Foundation. And I think some of the people who worked with me at that time uh, in helping people to figure that resonance out are present here. And the way to work this was that we would then leverage our network to be able to start helping such people to even connect with their so-called drill options. So I made my network open. I contacted many people in the industry. I remember at one stage a guy came to me whose mother was very interested that he should continue to pursue IT. But he used to be interested in music. He used to be interested in photography. So from my network, I helped him connect to one of the well-known photographers of India. And to cut a long story short, today this guy is a very successful professional photographer who lives in Sweden. It took him some amount of time to figure out and to even develop the interest to a point where he could say that this is what my life is going to be. I remember another case where a lady came to me. She was, I think, about 28, 29 years old, and she had become a recent mother, and she used to be a sales trainer. So her question was, what is it that I can do? So we spoke about things. We spoke about what is it that she was good at. I found her to be very soft spoken. She could connect with you beautifully. And one of the things I shared with her as a possibility was, I said, can you look at some kind of energy work? Because you seem to have some presence. Now, she actually went and looked at something called clinical hypnotherapy. She got certified in it and became a clinical hypnotherapist. And then subsequently, she combined her past experience of actually training to put it together along with this and became a trainer in the whole space of mindfulness. And today, as we speak, she's not only a hypnotherapist, but she is also teaching mindfulness to college students. So I find that once you start on this journey, you will find things. And the other thing which I've learned is that not everybody is necessarily fortunate. Sometimes we get caught in the trap of EMIs. We have not really found this trajectory, and it may take us a certain amount of time to be able to take that leap of faith. We may never take that leap of faith till we are much older. And I believe that you're never too old. Sometimes, later on, I talk to people today in their 50s and 60s. For them, money is no longer important. For them, meaning is important. So the whole, working for a job to pay the bills is out of the equation now. So the question still remains that in such a situation, what will help you to decide? And it's not just about saying that, oh, I want to find meaning. I believe that you will really find meaningful meaning if you have first examined yourself more deeply, figured out your passion and your proficiency, which is what I call your swabhav, and then put this swabhav to work in what is called your swadharma, which is what is it that you are really here for. So I guess if I have to give a key message on what is the process, what is resonance, this is really what it is. And sometime in 2013 14, I came across a very interesting framework, which is called the Barrett's framework. So I started using the Barrett's framework to keep redefining some of these aspects for me from time to time. So every 2 to 3 years, I prepare a document for myself, which answers a few questions. And I'm now going to share that framework with you. It's a framework which was given to us by Barrett Values Centre. So that is, it's important to know that. And I was certified in Barrett Values Centre. So I could actually use this for myself and for others. So what this framework actually talks about your soul and your head, which means your doing and your being components. It first starts by asking you to define what is your core motivation. Which means what is it that really brings me to work? Work doesn't necessarily mean working for somebody, for my own self. What is it that really gives me passion? Now, what I have written here is my updated core purpose and its elements as on date, October 2023. This is probably the fifth or the sixth iteration in the statement. So, holistically evolving as a human being personally is currently probably the most important to me. The other things are there, but they are relatively secondary. So, I spread knowledge and insights and create spaces to enable such deeper connections. So, for example, this conversation that I am having with you is to create such a space of reflection. And I'm in intimate conversations and storytelling sessions about life and living, which is exactly what I'm doing right now. So, this is my current core motivation. Then, my contribution to my clients or employer, as the case may be, depending upon the context to which I belong. Number one, I support people in their personal evolution. And by helping them answer these kind of questions, by helping them navigate and bring clarity in their life. And the second, at the level of organizations, I help build enduring institutions. I realize that my focus in the last few years is more and more the first and less the second. Because I do have a sense of despondency with respect to institutions and organizations. Maybe I have become somewhat cynical. So I do less work with them. But if for the last 2 years, I've been working with an NGO, and I think that gives me a lot of satisfaction in helping them to be endearing and enduring. Then the third is, what is my contribution to the wider world? By the way, these headers are all part of the framework of Barrett Values Centre. So what is my contribution to the wider world? I build and nurture communities that inspirationally spread health and happiness on this planet. Now, I realize that over the last few years, it's probably more social media led communities. So I tend to spread knowledge a lot using social media whenever I have an opportunity for community. So, for example, Kevin has this community, and I am collaborating with him to be able to spread the word about something which I believe could be useful to everybody. But health and happiness on this planet is somewhere important. My wife and I set up something called a Health and Happiness Center 6 years ago. We have a house in a place which is in Gurgaon near Delhi, and we have a house there, and we live in Delhi. So we converted it into a happiness and healing center where we invite facilitators who work in the alternate energy space, for example. And on the other side, we have people who are interested in uh, taking this kind of an information and becoming, more healed and more happy. And the last box is about what gives me personal fulfillment. So I believe that when I enable people to do this discovery for themselves and also help others to develop the skill to do so, so that there can be a wider impact. So let's say if there are 80, 90 of you here. One is that if you deeply understand what I'm sharing with you, you actually apply it to your life. And then based on that application, you're able to, let's say, bring this same approach to another 10 people, another 50 people. Just imagine the exponential impact. So that is something which gives me a sense of deeper fulfillment. I'm not into a numbers game, to be honest. People ask me saying, okay, how many people have you converted? That's really not my game. My game is to be able to touch deeply people. Even if I have touched one person deeply, I believe that I have a sense of fulfillment about it. And at a very personal level, I have a vision of being the best father in the world. My daughter may not ever say so, but I think I do things to be a best father and a supportive husband. So this is something that I figured out later on, and this framework helps me to keep thinking and rethinking my sense of purpose. And my core purpose, which I have defined, um, I don't know. I think I've stopped sharing. One second. Let me just do that for a minute. So my core purpose is given right at the end, which combines all these things together, which is actually to enable individuals and organizations to discover and manifest their deeper calling and higher purpose. So when I work with organizations, I ask them a simple question. Do you want to be the best in the world, or do you want to be the best for the world? And it's okay to be best in the world only if your intention is to be the best for the world. Otherwise, it's an ego trip. It's not a soul trip. And both these things that I do is to help build a happier and healthier planet, not just for current generation, but also future generations. And I try to contribute to it in whichever way I can. So that's the core purpose, evolved from looking at all of these elements. And as I said, this is renewed periodically, maybe once every 2 to 3 years. So I think with that, I'm going to end my very long monologue and perhaps invite Kevin, because he wanted to ask some questions and then involve the audience to handle their questions.